How you guys doing? Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Am I mic'd? Am I mic'd? Yeah. All right. So thanks for coming to the workshop. They said, you know, do you want to do a speech? And I said, well, yeah, because it's actually been almost a year since I've been out in front of a crowd because there's been protests and Antifa and all this kind of stuff. So there's been a lot of deplatforming. So I've kind of adapted. There's a lot of suppression on YouTube of my channel and stuff like that. So I've kind of adapted by going out into the world more, but I can't do speeches other than for these kinds of tough guys because it's a lot of pushback. So I actually been doing documentaries. I went to Hong Kong not too long ago. I wanted to know what was going on there because it really does seem kind of fascinating. It's kind of real battle between free markets and socialism or communism. So I went out with the guy who made the movie Hoaxed. I don't know if you've ever seen Hoaxed, but Mike Cernovich Productions, really, really good movie. You can get it at hoaxedmovie.com. We went out to Hong Kong, and can I go forward and backwards just out of curiosity? Yeah, okay. I like to stay out of focus because it makes me look younger. So if I mess around with the autofocus. Oh, yeah, okay. That's right. So we went out to Hong Kong. I interviewed the guy who wrote their constitution, a bunch of politicians and business people and so on. Then we went down to a protest. Man, these are some tough guys down there because they're facing like these seriously fascistic Hong Kong police, which have a lot of influence from China. And it's wild. You know, they try to create these makeshift barriers on the street. So they'll rip up stuff like the railings and so on. They'll rip it up. And as soon as someone starts doing that, it's called the umbrella movement, partly because umbrella keeps the tear gas at bay. And when someone starts ripping something up to fight against the incursion of the police military vehicles, a bunch of people go and open their umbrellas. It's because there are security cameras everywhere. And this way they can't see who's doing it. And these guys are seriously brave, except it had actually the girliest implement I've ever seen. I was walking down towards where the police were with the protesters. And they had little children's inflatable rafts. And I'm like, as far as weapons of war goes, I've not seen that one. And said, no, it's a shield, right? Because you can put tape on it and you can strap it to, so then when the bricks start flying, you've got at least some kind of shield, right? So we went right down to the end, and it's funny. Have you guys been in big crowds when there's like a real something going on? That's like this collective consciousness. Like people just start, you know, those birds when they swarm and all of that, they're all kind of moving. There's this kind of like people suddenly start moving one way and nobody knows exactly why. And then there's another tide that goes. We went right down to the end, and then they unleashed all the tear gas on the protesters. And that's, anyone ever been tear gassed? It's a little later in my presentation, so you'll. If you don't get emotional, I'll just tear gas you. So look at the passion in their faces. But yeah, sprinting with tear gas, I mean, it's really, it gets your attention, right? And that is really quite, so we're still working on the documentary. It should be out sort of middle of next month, but I hope to explain it before they get swallowed up by the Chinese juggernaut. But so going out and doing that kind of stuff is a lot of fun, but I sort of miss interacting with people about philosophy, right? So I do this call-in show I have for like 15 years. So when they said, do you want to do like a workshop? I'm like, hells yeah, because if we can talk philosophy or how philosophy can help you, and it's not just me staring at a camera in a studio, I mean, eye contact and all of that, I mean, that's way better. Because it drives me crazy when I do all these calls, and I don't want to put people on video because a lot of them are dealing with sort of very sensitive issues. So the idea of actually being able to see the people I'm talking to is like, absolutely, yeah. So these doors fortunately lock from the outside, so you can't leave. That's just, I appreciate you coming and I appreciate you staying, although the first was a choice, the second really isn't, so thank you for all of that. But so the way we can start is, if there's something, I don't know if you've listened to my show before or know the kind of approach that I take, but it's, philosophical, and I'm not afraid of personal issues, because to me, philosophy is something that should help you in your daily life. It's great to talk about free will and how do you validate the senses and how do you know the nature of reality and are we living in a simulation? And that's great stuff, and it's a foundation, but does that really help you in your day-to-day life? And I don't know that it does hugely. I think it may have a big effect sort of long-term. So the way that I really like to work with philosophy is these kinds of principles should be able to help you in your day-to-day life. It's great to understand nutrition. I know I'm at a men's conference when I'm at lunch and everyone's like, so what's your diet? What do you bench and what's your diet? When, because we want the abstract principles not to be like masculinity and femininity, but also, does it help you work out? Does it help you maintain your weight? Does it keep you healthy? It's the same thing with philosophy. Abstract principles are great, but it really can the rubber can hit the road in your life. And so if anybody has like a yearning burning, what we're going to do is, you guys are off camera because I said, it's all about me. No, because you want some privacy and all that. So your voice will be on, but the camera will be on me. So if you have, or if anybody, hopefully you do, otherwise it's going to be 2 hours of me doing a soft shoe routine or something, which you really don't want to see. But if you have something that's going on in your life that you think philosophy might help with, I will be happy to bring that to bear. But so I guess the first question is, does anybody have questions? So why don't you take a mic and we'll talk about it. Do you have a joke you'd like to share with the entire class? Sorry, I'm being my third grade teacher, right? Did you bring enough gum for everyone?
What I want to do is smash my enemies, and I want like a philosophical background for me to be able to do that.
Are any of your enemies in the room at the moment? Because we can cage match, like totally. Fuck it, we can cage match. Grab a pen, stab like a bitch, man. Yeah. Sorry, you wanted to.
No worries, Stefan. First of all, thank you for coming. I've watched your videos on and off throughout the years, so yeah.
Sorry, on and
off.
No, I didn't get that off. I don't. It just glitched for me there. It's like, okay, so.
So I think one of my questions or comments, or rather two, is just how philosophy and logic has, at least me growing up, wasn't really, especially in the education system where it's supposed to be given some form or another. It's not, at least the way.
Well, the opposite, really.
Right.
It's not non-philosophical; it's anti-philosophical.
It's anti-philosophical, right? So, I guess now that I'm a little older, I've started reading. Right, I've actually done a little more work in that realm because I know that's one of my weaknesses. So, can you recommend some kind of like a guide or a roadmap that'll help me, and as well as if I end up having a family and having the kids, how to impart that? Because for the foreseeable future, I don't see that going back to where.
No, we're not turning it around quite yet. Yeah. No, that's a great question. So we could talk about the reasoning. I got a whole series of free books on the web, freedomain.com. The books are all free except for The Art of the Argument, because I wanted to get that on Amazon and Audible, and I had to charge for it. But so I obviously would recommend my own books. Plato's dialogues are fantastic for getting started, but that stuff, try and stay away from the Germans. They'll just pretzel your brain till you can't know which way is up. But Nietzsche is great as a thought provoker. He's more of an aphorist. So Nietzsche will say really, really cool things, like give a man a why and he can bear almost any how, right? If you have enough of a purpose, you'll find a way to get there. Is that philosophy? I'm not sure. It's fortune cookie stuff. It's thought provoking. Or he said something I always remembered. He said, vanity is the fear of appearing original. It's kind of true, right? Because vain means that you want to look good to other people, but other people usually look at originality like it's some sort of airborne virus that's going to strip you of your testicles, right? So vanity is thought-provoking stuff, but not necessarily of great utility in your daily life. Schopenhauer, well, I don't know if men's rights guys, I should recommend Schopenhauer for his view on women and so on, but Schopenhauer in terms of pessimism is very important because we all have to wrestle with nihilism. Right, we all have to wrestle with nihilism, particularly right after we realize just how much we've been fucking lied to in life. We all have to wrestle, some people call it the red pill rage with regards to male-female issues, but with regards to truth, reason, and evidence, we get pretty pissed. And reading people like Schopenhauer who are more negative can help you process that, although it's not where you want to stay. Right? You know what I mean? It's not where you want to stay. It's like chemo, go to chemo, stop going to chemo, right? And go and deal with the negativity and then find a way to move on. I'm a big fan of Ayn Rand, very digestible. Philosophy, very thought-provoking, and an incredible writer. All this cliches about, she couldn't do great characters and so on. It's like, dude, it's stylized. It's romanticism. It's not kitchen sink drama. It's not supposed to replicate life. It's supposed to give you something to aim for rather than hold up a mirror to reality. It's like saying, you know, in Shakespeare, nobody's that poetic. It's like, yeah, I know. Oh, the other thing too, which really pisses me off, this is a total by the by, I'm sorry about that. My whole life, you know, if you guys have read Fountainhead, Atlas Shrugged, so in it there is some pretty rough sex scenes, right? Where the women are like, no, 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 fine, 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 no, 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 fine. And so like my whole time was like, oh, this is like rape culture and there's rapes in these movies and this is terrible and terrible and terrible and this is why no woman should ever read Ayn Rand. It's like, then along comes 50 Shades of Grey and I'm like, oh, fuck. You gotta be kidding me. You get it, right? Because it's like, oh, this is like, and it's like, oh, what, did he just not have a helicopter? If Howard Rourke had a helicopter, he'd be fine? Jesus. Anyway, so I think a lot of that stuff is really, really good to start with. As far as, for me, and I think emotional motivation is more important than intellectual focus. Because if you have, if you give a man a why, he can bear almost any how. Why do you focus? Well, for me, a lot of it had to do with real anger at not just the human birthright, but more specifically the masculine birthright that I was stripped of because men are really, really good at arguing and debating and processing reality, right? Because we build the shield, the shelter of civilization, which keeps the women and the children safe. You know, there's this old line from The Godfather where he says, you know, men can't afford to make mistakes. Women and children can afford to make mistakes, but men can't. And I think there's a sort of glean of truth in that. So if, for me, it was like, holy shit, I've really, really been lied to. And the greatest power and musculature of my intellect was not just atrophied, it was turned against me. I was supposed to argue against myself, against reality, against reason, against evidence, against facts. And so we are really castrated mentally in a very gynocentric educational system, right? I mean, when I was a kid, single mom, daycare, female teachers, primary school, female teachers. I did go to boarding school, which was more masculine for a couple of years when I was 6 to 8. But, you know, for the most part, it's just like women, 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 authority, authority, authority. And I remember when people first telling me about the patriarchy, it's like, how, what now? Patriarchy? Like I didn't know any real fathers around when I was growing up, and all the teachers were women in the daycare. I worked in a daycare when I was a teenager, it was all females except for me. So this whole patriarchy thing just seemed kind of crazy. So once you get angry, and anger is a really, really great emotion. It's really powerful. It's your body's immune system, right? Like you know, AIDS is when your immune system doesn't recognize a foreign virus, as far as I understand it. It doesn't fight back against it, and it's not AIDS that kills you, it's all the... So anger, male anger, has been demonized as something destructive. But it's not. You know, you get angry at cold, you build a house, right? You get angry at having to walk everywhere, you build a road. You know, anger is very, very important and very healthy. It's just being demonized, like it's just destructive. But that's rage. That's totally different, right? That's very, very different. Like there's times when your body's immune system will attack yourself, right? And that's rage, right? You want your body's immune system, you want it to be functional, so you can't be without anger. That's unhealthy. But you don't want it to attack yourself and your values. That's why the Schopenhauer stuff is kind of toxic. You don't want it to be rage, but you want that healthy anger so that you can push back against that which is trying to destroy you. Not to the point where you destroy yourself, obviously, that's the rage part. But that anger is really important once you realize how much has been robbed of you and how much you've been lied to. We're pretty good at focused anger as men, and that gets us through to a destination, right? I mean, fuck the wolf who's trying to eat your family. Like, sorry, man. You know, we're both mammals, but it's you or me, right? And so that anger, I think, is really important. Now, of course, again, when you say anger is good or whatever, people think you just sit in a bit of rage at a corner, you know, like Meatloaf denied dessert or something, but it's not that, really. Sorry, that's an older reference for people. People think, why would a piece of food be allowed dessert? I just listened to Bat Out of Hell the other night while I was working on something. Dear God, I'm telling you, that music can beat the shit out of modern music. It really can. It's like a biker gang hitting a tutu gang. Anyway, it's killer. It's killer. Just get into that music. I mean, that guy's childhood too. Holy shit. Do you ever hear about Meatloaf's childhood? Holy crap. So he grew up in Texas kid, right? Not a small kid. His father beat him, like threw him through plate glass windows downstairs, and his father, Meatloaf's father, this will actually make sense in a sec, but Meatloaf's father came at him with a knife And Meatloaf was a big boy, right, and put his father in hospital and then left barefoot in his mid-teens, left home. Yeah, he's had some challenges for sure, right? But that anger is really, really important. It's something that when you harness it, it gives you incredible propulsion. If it's absent from you, you're inert. If it's too present, like this Aristotelian mean is really, really important for men. More so, I think, than for women, right? So Aristotelian mean is you want something that's a balance between two, right? So what do you call an excess of courage?
Pride.
Foolhardiness is more the technical term, like, fools rush in where angels fear to tread, right? So an excess of courage is like, I'm going over the First World War trench into the German machine gun nest, right? You're like Gallipoli down into nothing, right? And so an excess of courage is a vice. It's dangerous, right? And a deficiency of courage is called? Cowardice, right? In which case you don't take on necessary fights and you get people to walk all over you, right? So you don't want to be a bully, but you don't want to be a victim. You want to be assertive, not aggressive. And that is a tough balance to find. And this is something Aristotle said like 2,500 years ago. He said, any idiot can get angry. Any idiot. And we see this all the time, a road rage and, people screaming at security guys. Anyone can get angry. To get angry at the right time, in the right proportion about the right issues and express it in the right way, that's hard. That's hard. And we have been taught to shy away from our anger because it's toxic masculinity and it's destructive and somehow it's going to make babies explode in the womb or something like that, which is more female narcissism and abortion. But anyway, so I think that to me the anger has been very, very healthy and very, very helpful. And if we can really embrace that and use it for us, what are borders around a country but boundaries in a relationship? And if you don't, because we've been so emasculated with regards to anger, our countries are open for the taking, which is catastrophic for us. So that's I can tell you the books and so on, but if you you want to reclaim what was taken from you, like get angry at the people who took something from you and fight to get it back. It's like if somebody stole your father's wealth and you didn't get your inheritance, you'd be pretty mad and you'd fight to get it back, and you should. And that's the same thing with our reasoning and all of that. It's really been stripped from us. So, and that's to some degree because we have a whole education system that can't stand even the remotest moral scrutiny. We have an educational system that's paid for by forced coercive taxes. And often in many countries, children are forced to go there, or you're certainly forced to pay for it, even if you don't have kids, or even if, like me, you homeschool. So we have an entire educational system based upon pointing guns at people to get what you want. And then we go to that educational system and they say, well, don't push anyone. You can't take stuff without permission. You've got to respect property rights. It's like, who pays your salary? The gun. Yeah, so I mean, it's so compromised that you can't even look at it without your brain. It's like the mom, like they did this real-time study a couple of years ago on they were trying to study how parents interacted with their children, and what they regularly heard was this.